and API management is one of the services of BTP. Okay, so what it entails, right? What in detail? So it's just a management. Okay, what sort of management? One can say that okay, we can manage it offline, right? We can manage it or through an Excel, or let's say if Excel is not a good example, then there could be other softwares, right? Existing middleware softwares. Why do we need BTP API management, right? Because as long as it's in API, everything is API right now. So what does BTP API management, or for that matter, any API management offers as a unique feature? Okay, so there are three key aspects to it. If you see, one second, let me point. So if you see, there are three key aspects of it. One is your developer engagement, the other one is governance, and the third one is insights. Okay. So when I say developer engagement, meaning that you want to make the API consumption as a self-service affair, because if you've seen in any integration project, there's a lot of effort goes in coordination. People ask, okay, how, give me an API, okay, give me its documentation, then give me the credentials, how do I use it, give me a sample payload, give me the sandbox server details and all of that, right? So there's a lot of engagement which needs to be done, uh, even for one consumer application team. Okay, so with BTP API management, you get to um, have a facility of using the developer hub. So the developer hub is a sort of a portal which hosts your APIs as products, right? Um, and using the products, you can uh, find out the API that you're interested in. Then you can get its key, and then obviously you can try. You can test the API. The sample payload and the documentation will be available for you, right? So these are the features that we have. Okay. Now, the other thing that manage API is the governance aspect of it, and this, according to me, is a key feature wherein your APIs you can do proxification, you can put security around it, you can put traffic management around it, and obviously you can have a bit of transformation as well for the incoming payload, right? Now, what is a proxification? So proxification is nothing but you are creating a layer on top of your API, an existing API, which could be created in any platform for that matter. And using that classification, you are encapsulating the true endpoint, safeguarding it from the external world, right? So you created a proxy around it. Now, why is that proxy helpful? Because under that proxy, you have a feature of applying policies, right? And using policies, you can take care of the security, you can take care of the traffic management, you can take care of the transformation. Okay. Now, again, the details of which will show as we progress, but on a high level, this is what you can do, right? So all of these are done using policies, and that's the key feature of API management, one of the key features, I should say, right? And let's go into detail a bit. So These are the same things that I just talked about. You can create your own unified and harmonized API presence, secure your API, perform traffic management, right? So traffic management is, you can control the quota, and you can put spike arrest, right? So, example, the DDoS kind of attack, if someone wants to simulate, right? So you can control that using policies so that it does not hit it, it does not get a victim of such attacks, and you, because of your policies, it gets controlled in advance, right? Okay, then you can govern your APIs, right? Again, using policies. Then you can get business insights. So we have a feature of analytics on the API, and then with that we also have logs, right? So using that, you can get business insights on the usage of your APIs. Um, then you can transform your APIs. You can put header and payload modifications within your API using the proxy. Then again, developer engagements. I think I explained in good detail on why do we need a developer hub, right? So it gives you API documentation, code snippets, and then much more around it. With the developer hub, the developers can easily engage with the platform, enabling them to discover, subscribe to, and consume APIs directly. Core concepts and architecture, API proxies. So again, this is just a repetition of what the topics, right? So I mean, in terms of what topics will I cover, right? So, as I said in the beginning, API proxies, providers, products and applications, and policy management. This is what we're gonna see. Uh, Now, I'm going to show this in the system, but just before that, a little bit of sneak peek. Okay, so API proxy is a layer, like I said, is a mediator that exposes backend services. The backend services could be REST, OData, SOAP, and we expose it to the external consumers. So these external consumers are called nothing but as called as application, right? It provides a layer to enforce security, traffic control, data transformation without altering the backend. It ensures controlled access to backend system by managing authentication, rate limiting, message transformations, thereby protecting and optimizing backend services, API providers, right? So API provider is nothing but it acts as a connection between API management and the backend system, right? So backend could be anything, right? It could be an application which is hosting multiple APIs, and that could be your so the API provider will be for that particular application. The connection details are encapsulated in API detail, API provider. Okay. Then we have products and applications. A product is a grouping of one or more API proxies that are packaged together to address specific use cases or cater to particular developer groups, right? So basically, they are significant in organizing and packaging APIs for easy discovery and subscription on developer portal, which facilitates a targeted API exposure to developers or partners. Then applications is application in the SAP API management represents consumer side of the APIs. These are created by developers subscribing to products on the developer portal to consume APIs. Applications serve as a bridge between API consumer and the APIs. allowing developers to generate API keys and access API securely. Right. So this is what I was just talking about in the beginning, that developer portal, right? So you go, you using products, you find out your API, and then typically developer hub portal allows you to generate your API key, and then so that you can consume the API. Okay. So what are the key components of API proxy? Let's actually see this in the system. Okay. So when you open your okay, one second. Why this not okay, when you open your BTP integration suite tenant, if you have added the capability for API management, if you go to configure and under APIs, the screen will open up. Uh, as you can see here, you have API proxies, providers, and you have certificates, KVM, key value maps, and policy templates. We're not going to cover them all. We're going to focus only on proxies and products in the screen, and a bit about KVM, but that's about it. So this is the proxy that I've created. So let me go into detail. So to show you what slide we left on. So when you create a API proxy, it basically asks you the title, the host alias is automatically populated. The API based path is what you specify, right? So typically, it's a good practice to include a version with your API. So this, for example, is v1 and then a meaningful name for your proxy. And then once it is deployed, you see the status active. Okay. Host alias, as I said, is updated automatically. Then proxy endpoint, it's not always used, but it can be used. I'll show you when we get into policies on what is the significance. Basically, if you want to um, put some mini transformation around it, for example, you can have a variable, a property for dev, queue, and production, and you can add the routing rules here. So that way, the properties that come based on that, you can put some dynamicity around the endpoint, the source endpoint. Then target. Okay, so under target, you have three options. You can create a proxy using a provider, or you can create a proxy on top of another existing API proxy, or you can simply use a URL to create a API proxy. Okay. Now we'll get into provider, but so when you choose a provider, so this in this case we have chosen a provider from SAP backend, which is S4 HANA, and as you can see here, we're using a OData service for good receipt posting, which is API underscore material underscore document underscore SRV. So this is a standard OData V2 service supplied by SAP as a part of the S4 HANA system. Okay. And then under resources, are the various operations. So you can term it as sort of operations basically, wherein this is entity a underscore material document header, and obviously with this entity you can just play around a bit. You can add the item as well, as you can see here. um, Various operations you can do. You can add the item and the serial numbers is together, or you can just get the header. You can post it. You can get using a particular year, right? This is a very good use case where you may want to fetch a material document based on the year, because over the multiple years the material document numbers could be same. Then you can cancel a document. Then you have more resources under items and serial numbers, right? And then this is a revision. So this is a revision is just like a versioning of your API. um, I'm going to come back to the policies, but before that I want to show you the provider. So as I said, provider is just a connection to a particular system, in this case a backend system, right? So um, when you create it, basically it first asks you for a type of provider. So there are essentially four types: internet for any cloud based system, on premise for an on-premise system which will be connected via cloud connector. You cannot connect directly to an on-prem system from BTP because it's a cloud system. BTP is a cloud system. Um, then you have open connectors to connect to third-party APIs. Then you have cloud integration for accessing the service endpoint. So basically, if you create a iFlow on cloud integration and then are creating a API on top of it, this is the option that you will choose. Open connectors can be used to connect to third-party APIs. I have not used it so far. Never um, feel the need to, but I'm sure this will be very helpful when we have an open connector scenario. On-premise is very frequently used, just like in this case, right? So, and then this is a host name. Now, remember, this host name is what is exposed in Cloud Connector as a virtual host. So for those of you who have seen Cloud Connector in function, when you configure a Cloud Connector, you have a concept of a virtual host and an internal host. A virtual host is what you will specify here, along with the port. Now, location ID is again specific to Cloud Connector. So if you have multiple cloud connectors, then you for sure need to provide a location ID of the cloud connector that you want to add. But uh, in any case, I would really recommend that you mention location ID always. Because in future, if it goes towards a scenario where it has multiple cloud connectors, you don't need to come back and change here anything, right? So, and then this is the ACP client, right? Under catalog service settings is where, so typically this will be same for all OData API connections. So the path prefix will be SAP OData. In service collection catalog URL will be IWFND slash catalog service, and then catalog URL will be the host name, the port name, then SAP OPU data, and then IWFND slash catalog service. Authentication type would be basic. In this case, there are other options as well, which we can cover later on, and then username and the password. Now, if everything is correct, the username and the password is correct, and the connection details are correct, especially the cloud connector details. If you do a test connection, you will get this 200 OK. Now, in some cases, I think in particularly with the cloud integration flows, wherein you are actually pointing to a particular service, but you're still creating a provider. There, what you will get is basically you will get a 400 kind of error, right? And it will say that though the connection is up and running, uh, we got this error code, right? Which means that your connection is fine, but since it expects a certain kind of payload and you just did a test connection, basically you didn't send any payload, so it failed with that error, right? So don't worry about that in such situation and know that this is why it is not working. Okay, I hope this is clear so far. A good part with the video is if you are not clear with something, you can play it in rewind, play it in slow motion, fast motion, whatever suits you, right? Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a payload for this, and then we'll show you the policies. Okay, now so um, this is the URL. If you notice here, material document SS, material document SS. So this is the unique endpoint. This is the server name, and then this is the entity name, and post is the behavior. So basically, we're using this particular resource. Okay. Now, this is the standard payload. I mean, it is very. I'll maybe in some other session I'll make a very short video which shows how to get a sample payload of any OData service exposed by SAP, right? Because I kind of initially struggled a bit, so I think this will be useful. Because sometimes we don't know what fields are essentially required to post a basic message. Okay, this is a standard payload. Now, what with this API I am intending to do is post a good receipt document against this purchase order for 4522. Moment I 101, order item is 10, plant is CA01, material is specified, goods movement code is 01. Now, how do I authenticate? I'll cover this portion in detail as well. So I'm using OAuth 2.0 to authenticate against my policy, against my proxy for which I've implemented some policies. So I got a new token. I got proceed. Notice the token type is bearer token, use token. What this does is basically it adds a prefix called bearer and the token, right? Let me show you quickly what I'm talking about. If you're using Postman and click on this 9 hidden headers, if you spot the authorization header, and if you can display it, it will show you bearer space the token, right? This is a token which got generated, right? And also, yeah, that's it. And then I'll send this payload and I should get a 201 created, which means that um, my material document is posted. If you see, I got this number with the year, the material document, and here as well with all the other details and created by user as well. Okay. Now, it'll be interesting to see now how this played out, and what policies played what part. Actually, let me put this in a debug mode. Okay, fire again. Okay, 108 created, refresh. Wonderful, all green. So this is the debug screen of a API proxy, right? Uh, so this can be a bit difficult to interpret in the beginning because of all the icons and I mean, to me, it feels like it's not very user friendly to understand. But I'll try to make it easy for you, right? Because I learned it the hard way, so you should not, right? So I mean, it would have been better to give it a better structure, but I think that's once you get used to it, you will understand. So if you see, this is the initial stage of it. This is like a pipeline where your message flows. This is your very first policy, which is implemented. And I'll show you the policies as well. This policy is called Verify API Key back. Okay. Now see this request.header.api key. This is what is sent while calling this API from the postman and if from anywhere else also. If you want to send, this is to be sent and this is verified. Had this been a wrong API key, you would have seen a failure here. I'll just quickly show you by replicating this. I'll show you the header also where it was passed. See this API key. I did not deliberately show this earlier so that I can show you this now. Right. So you see this API key, same API key. Now, if I just add a 1 in front of it, should see a failure now, 401 unauthorized. Why unauthorized is because okay, within 5 millisecond it failed because it's the very first step, right? So you see here and you see a very limited steps because it failed in the very first step, right? So here if you see it says abort, abort, abort. And why? Because the header API key which you sent failed to verify, right? And if you see here, this key is populated, but this is not populated because it's not a valid key. You see the same here. Okay, sorry, this is a variable retrieve. So yeah, I mean, but it failed because, and in this case, if you see, action is continue. Why? Because the key got verified. Okay, so that's the key reason. Um, Next is the raise fault. Basically, raise fault is what that let's say the key was let's say the token was not sent, right? If this is blank, right? In our case, it is not blank, so it is good. You have bearer space this, and I'll show you how this policy is implemented. So it got passed here, right? So this is the authorization where we are checking request.header authorization. Okay. Similarly, we have further policies where the next step is the you saw that bearer space token. That token is actually verified if it's a genuine token, right? In the next step, and then finally you remove the headers, right? To verify this, right? So this is how a debug screen looks like. Let me show you something like going into the policies. So this is the first step where you are verifying API key by looking into request.header.api key, right? This we are passing here again. Then raise unauthorized. See that you got 401 right here. This is coming from this policy. It is basically checking if the API key passed is correct. right? And basically if the header dot authorization is correct or not, right? So that is where um, it was failing. If I show you again by going back, I think it makes sense to see it in the right moment, otherwise you get lost, right? So um, so you got invalid API key. And since this got terminated at this step, it did not go to the next step uh, requested. And if you see, because of which the authorization is probably not correct, and then that's how it failed this authorization, right? So this was the first one, and then this is a step where it the token is verified, and then finally we are removing the header. So which header? The same header, the authorization header is removed. Why we are removing this? It is because now these were the policies which were implemented in the proxy endpoint. If you notice earlier, we have two sections after overview: proxy endpoint and the target endpoint. So these policies are executed before and after execution of the initial proxy endpoint, and this is for the target endpoint, which is, when we say target is the SAP OData API in this case. So basically what it is doing here is we are storing the credentials of the SAP OData service in something called as key value maps, which I just showed you earlier. And right, so and then we are encoding the credentials. These are all, most of the code you see here is standard. If you see, we're just using an operation, we're not reinventing anything here. And in case um, any of you faces problems there, we have very easy way outs by looking at various help available to fine tune the policies. Then this is the since this is a OData service, we have to get a CSRF token as well, right? Um, how do you usually get a CSRF token? By calling a get service and using header as x underscore CSRF underscore token and its value as fetch. That's exactly what it is doing here. So same thing you can do in the Postman as well, right? Let's say you want to do it using Postman. So you, what you'll do is basically you'll put a get around it, right? And pass cs sorry CSRF token. Oh no, the value will be fetch. If you do this, and I don't know whether this will work or not, it will give you the token. There's some problem with the URL. Okay. Okay, so and if the token is failed, then we raise a fault. If it has not failed, then we set the token in the header. Right. So don't worry about the policy. My intention was not to go deep, but I'm very confident that this will give a very good idea instead of just covering the high level basics of what is a API management. And maybe what I'll do is, if you like this video, and put a comment that yeah, you need a step by step on how to create this, I will create that as well. This is more for people who don't need a step by step but need an explanation. And even I think if you follow along, you can simply create from this one as well. But otherwise, I can create a step by step as well. So you saw a positive case, you saw a negative case. I showed you policies as well. I showed you API proxies, the policies, right? Let's now get into products. Like I said, products very simple. It's just a collection of your APIs to put it into logical groupings. Um, like in this case, I've just put this policies. There are options to put the permissions on the product level. You can put rate plans at the product level, you know, and it's just a useful feature that we have. Okay, all right, and then each product is associated to one or more applications. An application is nothing but it's a face to the consumer, and it gives you application key and the secret for the consumers to consume. And like you see in this case, it is one product, but you can add multiple products as well. And this is typically done using a developer hub um, to do that. Okay. Okay, I'll end it here to wind up with best practices. So we should follow RESTful principles, right? Use the standard formats like JSON, like XML. Use clear versioning. Documentation metadata should be very good. Then security, obviously, all of these policies mentioned here should be used. Like two of these I showcased right now: API key and OAuth 2.0. And policy management should duly be used. Obviously, everything primarily happens using policy management. That's where you get to code to safeguard your policy proxies. Then products and applications, just what I covered. So what it says is put it into logical groups. For example, order APIs, right? Analytics and monitoring. So do a good logging, enable traffic insights, configure alerts, leverage analytics, right? And then for governance, define design and security standards, enforce usage quotas, and for resource and fairness, conduct regular audits for compliance. Okay, so I'll end it here with just a quick disclaimer again that the documentation is all from SAP. You can simply go to help.sap.com and you will find everything right there. Um, except the best practices are not directly from there. It is like inspired from, like, I just did a research and found these to be helpful, and that's how I've recorded this. So thank you very much. I really hope that this was helpful, and like I said, comment for more such videos, please.